I think people discredit the power of symbology. Obviously, it's, well, when you sort of look into it, you realize that it is the most spoken and the most powerful language, one that most wouldn't know about, because it goes straight into the subconscious. And just because you consciously don't understand the symbolic meaning behind a symbol or a logo, it doesn't mean that, you know, when you go into the subconscious and you're going into the universal mind, it does know what it is.
The Holocene podcast is brought to you in collaboration with Alkhemist Vision, delivering a new line of clothing, helping protect against the negative effects of EMFs. Check them out on Instagram at Alkhemist Vision. For a 10% discount on your first order, at the checkout use promo code Holocene10 for a discount. Check them out online at www.alchemistvision.com. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Holocene podcast. In this episode, we invite our first guest and podcast collaborator, Nathan Alkhemist of alchemistvision.com. With career experience working closely in healthcare industry, more recently in his journey, he has made huge strides into the world of investment and entrepreneurship as a fashion designer and independent business owner. Nathan joins us to share some of his story and discuss ideas around his brand.
Hello everyone, this is the Holocene podcast with Ben and Jay. We have a very interesting guest on the podcast with us today. He is the founder of the Alkhemist Vision. He is actually our honorary sponsor, and we'd like to introduce you to Nathan. Nathan, how are you doing?
How's it going? You okay?
Very good, thank you. Really appreciate you coming on. We were very keen to, well, of course, me, you and Ben had a conversation when we had our initial meet, and we actually found ourselves going on a bit of a tangent, which was quite interesting. And I think along the way of discussion, we found out that we actually have quite a lot in common in terms of our viewpoints, especially around the likes of EMFs. And one topic which was quite interesting, which definitely grabbed my attention, was your experience within cryptocurrency as well, which I was hoping that we could touch on at some point during the interview. Did you want to run through a bit of your background story and kind of what's led you to the Alkhemist Vision and moving into the EMF lining of clothing as well?
Yes, it's no problem at all. So it's kind of a long story, but I'll break it down as swiftly as I can. So I was working in the care sector for, I would say, about 7 years. I was made redundant, unfortunately. So I had sort of about 3 months, to obviously look for another position. Outside of the company. I had to sort of reapply for the job. Fortunately, I didn't get the job after sort of 7 years working for the same company. So that kind of led me to kind of think that, at the end of the day, we're all a number, most of us, in terms of like the working force. As much as, hard work that you do within a company, sometimes it's a bit unnoticed. So I just said to myself, I don't want to kind of be put in this position again. I need to do something for myself, find another income stream, establish myself, for a business and whatnot. So I just kind of scratched my head and thinking, what are my talents? I used to dance for many years, very, artistic person. I'm getting on a bit now, so me kind of delving into the dance world would have been a bit unrealistic for me. So it kind of led me to kind of, I'm 33 now. My bones are all crickety now. So I thought, what can I do to kind of send a message to people? So it led me to start a company called Alkhemist. The word alchemy, it means sort of changing one form to another. So, in the Bibles, they've got a parable in the Bible where, Jesus turned water into wine. That's kind of alchemy in terms of a physical level. Obviously water into wine. So the standpoint is for me to sort of change my reality from one stage to another, which is another form of like a spiritual alchemy, which what I was going through with the transition of me, finding another career, and stuff like that. But going back to that word, my father, unfortunately, he passed when I was really young. His nickname was actually called Scientist, because he was a little bit of a brain box. So it's a kind of a double-edged sword to kind of tribute his name as well. Which kind of goes inside the alchemy and the scientist. It kind of goes inside with the name. So it's a little bit of tribute for himself as well. So it strengthened for me the belief that I can kind of push forward with this brand. So the concept of the brand is to for all cultures and spiritual belief systems to have a bit of a hub, really. So I've been sort of developing different designs around the Asian culture, like European, the Afro-Caribbean, the Pan-African culture, into like designs that can go on like sweatshirts and like hoodies and t-shirts and whatnot. So the sweatshirts and sort of anything that's sort of non-t-shirt, they're fully embroidered. So they have sort of a minimum of like 100,000 stitches per garment. So I wanted to kind of get longevity for the customer. Because when you're sort of buying a normal sort of sweatshirt and you've got like a printed sweatshirt, no disrespect to people that do print sweatshirts, but for me, like thinking of an outsider point of view, I wanted to have detailed designs that are actually going to sort of last forever, so you don't have to sort of worry about washing it after the 50th time and the color fades and stuff like that. So I wanted to kind of bring longevity to the customer, so they know that when they buy something and purchase from me, it is high end, it is really good quality. You don't have to worry about anything breaking and returning anything. So I just had to put myself outside of the box and think, what would I do? How would I feel in terms of being comfortable as a consumer buying a piece of clothing? So that's kind of it at the moment. Obviously there's levels to it, but that's kind of it in a nutshell. And I'm sort of developing obviously the EMF stuff, which obviously we'll talk about obviously when you're ready to, but it's evolving, and sort of I want to sort of obviously spread awareness to the world, that there is clothing companies that sort of do care about your well-being as well.
So it's about that quality, and I think most decent businesses, they have an idea that they sort of see that gap in the market and they come up with that that solution, and that seems to be their driving force, which in terms of the quality you've made pretty clear that that's what it is. And I wanted to touch on the sort of logos a little bit. I think if you're into what we're into in terms of the alternative research, you look at those logos and you feel something towards them. They're very esoteric, I think it's fair to say. And I think if you're not into the sort of alternative research or the alternative media, it might not, it might kind of fall short on you. But when I had a look through, and when Ben actually introduced myself to your website, it's almost like I knew your level in a sense. I knew this guy, he knows about this stuff. And I think that's why when we first had a conversation, it was pretty open, just based on the kind of symbology.
Yes. Yes, yeah, precisely. I mean, like pretty much not every sort of brand, but most brands, they have a deeper meaning towards their logo. And I won't don't want to sort of talk about the high end ones, obviously, because you've got sort of your copyright and your data protection and stuff like that. I don't want to really go into what certain brands mean, but obviously, if you do your research, you'll know that these logos that high-end brands have got go back sort of thousands of years. So you've got a kind of like a subconscious knowledge of what they represent, and some of them are actually old deities as well. So you have to sort of be careful in terms of what brands you're actually supporting, because it can go against your your internal sort of spiritual belief system as well, if someone's actually worshipping negative energy and stuff like that. So you have to be sort of obviously very careful in terms of what brands you're actually you're putting on and you're showcasing for yourself. So obviously
kind of like Starbucks and the siren.
Yeah.
It's all energy and symbolic, isn't it? I think people discredit the power of symbology. Obviously, it's, well, when you sort of look into it, you realize that it is the most spoken and the most powerful language, one that most wouldn't know about, because it goes straight into the subconscious. And just because you consciously don't understand the symbolic meaning behind a symbol or a logo, it doesn't mean that, when you go into the subconscious and you're going into the universal mind, it does know what it is. So it does hold a lot more power than you actually So when I saw your logos, these are symbols that I know Ben would understand, and you look at it, and with that knowledge, you think, I don't mind that being on my chest. I don't mind looking at that, because I know it has more of a kind of positive power.
Precisely, 100%, and that's sort of the entire sort of core and foundation of what I wanted to achieve. Knowing that if you are purchasing something, from the store, whether it be sort of a standard sweatshirt with my logo on, because my logo's got sort of transmutation circles, and it represents all the four elements as well, like earth, wind, water, fire. So it's all natural and refreshing, and something that if you haven't seen before, but you kind of know that you've actually seen it. I know it's very hard for kind of viewers to kind of like understand if you're kind of not from that world, but when you do your research and look into things, everything becomes a lot clearer. And if you don't, obviously you've got the cultural wear as well. Like one item that I've got is like a sweatshirt with sort of Akhenaten, so it's like the modern day sort of Moses, and so it's like got pictures of like three people underneath the sun, and there's beams of sunlight, and to the side of it you've got like it's called the Metanetia, but the modern day word is called hieroglyphics, and that's all pictorial, and that's actually the original sort of hieroglyphics that are actually found in the tomb. So it's very, very detailed. I think that's got sort of between sort of I think 200,000 to like 250,000 stitches in that as well. So it's like that's all pictorial. So it goes back to sort of that culture, and coming soon I've got like samurai warriors as well, and it just goes on and on. So if you don't understand the actual sort of picture messages, you understand the cultural heritage as well, so you can actually be proud of actually wearing something from your culture, which it's always a good thing to sort of do in terms of like empowering yourself and boosting your confidence as well.
Yeah, no, I love that. One of the things that got me really interested in your story, and I wanted to touch upon this with this interview as well, was obviously the transition from, and you covered it slightly between jobs and then setting up your brand, but the means as to how you did that, I think, is really interesting as well, especially the times we're going through today, and also some of our following are into the cryptocurrencies, and one in particular. So if you don't mind, it'd be nice to kind of go over your story again, just so the audience can, I guess, I don't want to, you don't want to create a bunch of dreamers, but the way you did it was was quite interesting, and it just makes you think, you know what, it's possible. So it's quite an inspiring story. And of course, we've just touched on how you've built a business around it, which is obviously quite inspiring within itself. But the means of how you got there, I think, is definitely quite interesting.
Yes, yeah. I'll delve into that. So yeah, at this actual workplace before I left, I think it's probably about a year. Probably just under a year. I met a chap who was doing some free IT classes for some of the residents where I was working, and was talking to him, on and off for a few weeks, and he sort of said to me that he's got his own sort of online business, and he does like stocks and shares and stuff like that, which I didn't have a clue about. So over sort of those months, I ended up sort of speaking to him, and he introduced me to the sort of the crypto world, and from there I saw the market, and seeing Ethereum and stuff like that, like $7, and Ripple at like 0.00 whatever, and didn't know how to trade, and sort of looking on YouTube videos and learning how to trade. So
like, cryptocurrency fans are cringing right now. What? How low?
It's crazy. Oh, it was literally pennies of pennies, like obviously fractions of a penny. This is when I sort of got into it. So ended up going on YouTube videos and research how to trade on like Poloniex and, and stuff like that. So I ended up sort of buying tens and tens of thousands of Ripple coins. So at one point I probably had about sort of like 80,000-90,000 Ripple. I probably could have had a lot more, but I just thought, okay, that's fine. Hold on to it for like a few years and see how it goes. So I think in between that time of I was selling and sort of buying back. Then I was cashed out for about 25,000. Overall. So obviously had money, there to kind of like do what I needed to do afterwards. So it was kind of obviously a really good nest egg that I had, quite a substantial amount of money, in savings. But I was still kind of kicking myself. I'm not going to lie, because obviously it jumped up to like $4 at one point. So I'm thinking, no crap, well, I could have had like good 400 grand. And it's something that you're thinking, you know what, end of the day, hindsight's like a beautiful thing. Obviously, if I knew what I knew now, obviously, I would have obviously bought a lot more, like obviously everybody else would have done, and been kind of like a multi-millionaire at this point.
Do you know what? No, the reason, and it's easy in hindsight to look back and think I could have, should have, would have, but yeah. I'm a believer of it counts in terms of what you do with the money as opposed to how much you have. So obviously you've seen an opportunity, you've done your research, you've learned a bit of trading. And you've rid the wave, and you rid it well. And at the end of it, it's like if you pull out 100 grand, if that 100 grand allows you to set up a business and set up a new lifestyle that you're going to be happy with, that's better than pulling out, in my opinion, a couple of million and having absolutely no goals and not knowing what you want to do with it. So
no, and
that's why it's a successful story,
Yeah, I'm actually glad that it happened that way, because I would have been. I reckon my ego would have gone through the roof, because I would have said, no one can speak to me, no one can talk to me about anything. I can, my own boss, stuff like that. I would have definitely spent the money. No, I wouldn't say all of the money, but it wouldn't have lasted me a good 10, 15 years. I would have got a really good house and stuff like that, which is fine. But I think my outlook on life would have definitely changed, and I wouldn't have been in the position to have more clarity and help people the way
humble. You kept
humble. So I think if it was happen now, then I know for a fact that I'll still be definitely more humble, like going forward now, because I would have obviously had that past experience and learned from it, knowing how I'm going to go forward. So I think definitely it happened for a really good reason. It kind of put me in my place in that respect. I think obviously I was a lot younger as well. obviously a little bit more immature and stuff like that, which, everybody is, growing up, you sort of form that maturity over time and experience. Yeah, I'm really happy, to be fair. I've got, no regrets, as it were, big regrets, as it were, that,
Well, you've used it well. You've used
yeah,
it well, and
yeah,
look where you are now.
yeah,
What I'm curious to understand, without going too far into the emotions, but when you saw that coin rise into the moon, and you're looking at the screen, what was going through your head? Because that must have been, and this is what we're, as cryptocurrency investors now, we know it's happened, and we know
yeah,
it's happened on a few cycles. So
yeah,
we're loading up. We believe we're at the bottom, or if not, we have bottomed already.
yeah,
And we're, we're looking to hopefully follow a similar suit.
yeah.
So, what was it like when you're looking every day and
Honestly,
you're just seeing it go up and up?
like, my heart was literally like in my mouth. I swallowed it, I shat it back out, and I picked it up again. That's excuse me. It was one of those moments. It was like I won the lottery, but I lost the ticket, and I'm searching for the ticket because I'm seeing everybody in my head. I'm thinking everyone's like, yeah, 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 because I've obviously got in very early. And
Yeah,
I ain't gonna lie, it was a wounder. It was definitely a wounder. Seeing it come up and stuff like that. But I think, like I said, it was just a moment where I just thought to myself, okay, in the future, I am sort of going to be obviously a lot more sort of disciplined in terms of like holding on to the investment. But I did get obviously something back. I think I put a couple of quid in, a couple come out of 25k. So it's like, I'm not gonna kind of lose sleep on it too much, because I had a decent amount of money backed up for when I was obviously made redundant as well. So I walked out with the last laugh anyway. Um, uh,
and
it's
never
it's
look
just
back.
like it's just one of those things. I think don't eat yourself up on it, because end of the day, things happen. I think there's probably some people that would have definitely committed suicide and stuff like that. I think the people are in the crypto world that have done that. So don't think that it's the end of the world, because obviously life's obviously more important than money at the end of the day.
Nathan,
So a definitely strong
Nathan,
message to kind of send out.
but the point that you were selling out though, because obviously it did go up to $3.50,
Drop
but
down
that
to
was
20.
like, well, yeah, that
Yeah,
was a parabolic spike. It's gone
yeah,
all the way up and absolutely slammed back down. So the chances of you actually being able to cash out and sell there is probably slim to none. So in
yeah.
reality, the wave that you rid was actually incredible. And the fact that you've gone in so early, I mean, if you was to speak to anyone you knew other than this chap who introduced you to cryptocurrencies, they
I
would
would
have
have
told you you were
known the
crazy.
wiser. Yeah, I know, and I wouldn't have known the wiser anyway.
Yeah,
To be
you'd have been like, okay, I'm crazy. Like I've spoke about this a few times. I was looking to buy Bitcoin in 2016.
yeah,
I ended up buying a house instead, which I'm happy about. I don't necessarily regret it, because so I'm on my second house now. We made some profit off the first house, and it all worked out, like you say, the way that it should. But if I wasn't to have listened to everyone at that specific time, and I actually followed my gut, again, I would have made a load of money. Loads of people were talking me off of it, or talking me out of it, and I listened to them. So now, and what I found now is we're in potentially the second or third or fourth within Bitcoin anyway. But in terms of XRP, the potential second pump, which is going to happen at some point,
yeah,
all of the fundamentals are in place. The utility is about to kick in, I think, and this time I'm a lot wiser and hopefully smarter than I was back then. So it all works out the way it should. But I think the thing that's most interesting to me is you've actually used that money for the good, and you followed your dream. And if someone said, would you rather have rid it and managed to cash out at the top, or would you rather have come out when you did and build a business with your vision? I'm hoping the answer would be, of course, the business.
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely, 100%. Yeah, I'm definitely glad it kind of helped in that way.
Yeah,
And just taking it every day as it comes now, really, and just trying to obviously just like I said, just help as many people as I can, and sort of open people's eyes in terms of the unity that we should, and hopefully we'll be having in the near future, within people becoming more self-aware and stuff like that. So yeah, it's really good. It's really good. I'm really happy.
fantastic. Okay, I was quite keen to discuss the EMF side. So you've mentioned it a couple of times so far, and this is one of the main reasons I think that we wanted to partner up, is because what we want to do is, I mean, there's going to be points that we talk about EMFs, and we've already done one video where we cover aspects.
Yes.
There's definitely people in the pipeline down the line that know a lot more than we do, and they're happy to discuss these points with us. But what we wanted to do as a podcast is we wanted to also, instead of just sharing information, we also want to offer solutions. And when Ben introduced me to your product, I thought that's incredible, because people always say, well, 5G, let's use that as an example because it's quite current. It's going to be all around us anyway, and what can you do? And I think there's nothing more powerful than actually having a real solution that you can point people in the right direction of, whether it is somebody who has more information than you do, or whether it is actually a specific product.
Yes, precisely.
So I think you've just gone live with your new EMF line. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes. So same concept as the the clothing with the sweatshirts and whatnot, but this time obviously we've got EMF protective clothing, which the thread is literally EMF protective thread. So it's 100% sort of anti-static. It's coated in pure silver thread. And the research that I've been doing shows that silver is a really big sort of nemesis of sort of radiation. So I've got a hoodie that literally is front, back, on the top of the hood, on the chest, coated in sort of EMF fabric to reduce and sort of repel the amount of sort of radiation that sort of comes from the mobile phones and Wi-Fi signals and microwave energy as well. So it's really good. It's been tried and tested. And it does significantly reduce the amount of sort of waves that are sort of hitting the body, because what research has shown is that these waves can damage your cells over time. They say sort of 5G is kind of a third of the way powerful enough to sort of crack your sort of DNA structure, obviously, which is really crazy to sort of hear. And also, it's still young technology in terms of radiation anyway, because from the days when they were doing the first pilots for sort of radio waves, and I think it was 1913, with the Spanish, when they had the Spanish flu. Don't quote me on the correct sort of time frame, but ever since then it's literally probably just over 100 years. Obviously now technology is getting more and more advanced. We don't know how it's going to affect us long term, because this is the new age. Same for trying to sort of think of an example to use. Like mercury, say for example, mercury, when the people used to put sort of mercury in people's fillings and stuff like that, or fluoride, and they're only discovering that now. And smoking, back in the day there was advertisements where you had sort of celebrities saying, I smoke this amount a day, and used to have it on sort of baseball cards and whatnot. And they're saying like smoking is really healthy. I think this is kind of the same principle, if I'm honest with you. There's no like sort of effects that people are probably noticing now, but long term, this is something that they will definitely need to sort of address in the future, 100%. That I'm trying to.
It's always too late, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
always too late when it comes out. Like, there's a couple of scandals that I can just come into my mind right now. Like the recent one is cement. Builders using cement for 20, 30 years, and now it's giving them cancer. Asbestos, talcum powder. They found asbestos in talcum powder. Smoking, doctors were prescribing cigarettes at one point, and like you said, it's on baseball cards. It's still there now. It's in the movies, and you look at a good example, because you two are up in that area in the Midlands, Peaky Blinders. And every scene, Shelby's smoking a cigarette, and you can't help but subconsciously think, I could do that. It looks cool. So I think it's a huge issue. I know I've done a lot of research on EMFs, and Ben actually, he's been really on it recently, and he's constantly sharing information with me at the moment, stuff that I've not even thought of or found. Ben, have you got anything to touch on the EMS side? I know you're really well versed at the moment, and you've probably got a lot of information on the tip of your tongue that you want to start firing at us.
I have, mate. I would imagine that I've been thinking, is this just a two-way conversation here? Is Ben actually on? Yeah, I've been.
Sorry, I think we're having a bit of a bromance, I think.
Mate, I encourage it. I mean, I was just thinking to myself as I sat there patiently, being quiet. I thought, I'm in the shoes of the listener or the viewer, as it were. I was just fascinated hearing you two go at it. I must admit, Nathan, although we've had several conversations now since we've come across each other's path.
Yes.
Every time I hear your story, there's a little bit more or another nugget that I haven't yet heard, and it's just fascinating. And just very quickly drawing back on the matter of you sharing your cryptocurrency journey thus far. I'd just like to underline and make the point to the listeners that are crypto enthusiasts or crypto investors. Heed Nathan's story and the lessons. There's some serious lessons to be learned from your example, because I know personally, looking around the crypto space, there are many people as we would describe in the crypto community sort of thing as quote unquote moon boys. The space is rife with people that are blindly assuming that you're gonna buy into something and it's gonna make you rich and happy and all of these things. But your example's a solid one, and I'm an advocate of your story, because there's a lot to be learned from your experience. So yeah, as Jay said earlier, I really commend you for having the discipline and the albeit it might have been tinged with a little bit of how do I put this, like a sort of a stumbling into your journey. Like, you can never forecast what's going to happen. Like, you had no idea that it would make such returns, but doing your research and your due diligence in something, especially if you're going to make a financial investment, and obviously
I done as much as I could afford at that moment in time, and even though it was small, a couple £100, I'm thinking, okay, I came out with a good amount of money, so I would have been happy to have lost that amount and not batted an eyelid, rather than sort of taking out a loan or maxing out my credit cards and stuff like that to pump in like thousands and expect something to make me some crazy returns. I was really sensible as well in that respect, so it was kind of like I couldn't really win. I couldn't really lose in that respect, because I put in as enough money that I thought that's fine. I can hold on to. I can not really bat an eyelid to that for many years. But it obviously happened quicker than what was was originally anticipated. So I probably wasn't sort of prepared as well. So
Yeah.
It's gone great, and the fact that I'm connecting with people like yourselves as well. It's like I've just kind of like I found like a new world anyway within this world, in terms of reconnecting to sort of like-minded people, and just expressing myself a lot more. I do feel kind of a lot happier that I'm actually was made redundant, overall, thinking of it now, because I never would have obviously been in a position to say actually I've got my own sort of clothing line, which is going for sort of just over a year, and it's going really well, and I'm learning, and I'm meeting new people, and just being expressive and trying to make it more of a obviously niche brand and something different that people actually haven't actually seen before, rather than you just see standard cliche designs where you sort of paying crazy prices for something that's actually just looks ridiculous and it's got no actual meaning to it as well. So it's actually, I found myself within the whole mix of it. So I'll let you carry on anyway, Ben. I was on a bit of a tangent
No,
there,
you're
but
right.
you know what I'm saying.
Bringing it full circle back to the EMF content, as Jay just pointed out, I have been like hot onto this sort of this topic recently, as the 5G debate. Is it safe? Isn't it safe? Who can we trust and who can't we trust? For example, there's a lot of back and forth at the moment, especially under the current circumstances with COVID-19. There's a large. I personally am seeing a lot in local and national media. The argument that it is safe. Ofcom, for example, in the UK, and the regulators and the governments and organisations such as Public Health England, they're all here referencing the regulators that set the safe standards as a point of reference and proof and evidence to suggest that it is safe, when in fact, and I'm not afraid to say this, that is absolute horse shit. So if you're listening, Public Health England and the government and
you put a target on us, mate. Episode 2.
Well, the thing is,
actually, episode 3. My bad.
My official stance on the whole EMF and 5G argument is fine. We need it. It's going to facilitate faster speeds and connections and all those things that are being presented to us as positive and progressive reasons for the rollout of the technology. Great, that's brilliant. But at least let everybody know that there are potential and probable side effects to becoming a part of and using such technology. That's my major gripe with it, because if you're not going to let people know that there are potential dangers, or not, I mean, I use the word potential, but it's a matter of fact. It is horrifically dangerous if it's not managed in a safe manner. And that leads me on to some of the research that I've been doing. I'm currently ongoing with the process of enrollment to, I would argue, based on my research, the leading EMF based professional healthcare course that there is out there currently. It's put together by, I believe, a German professor and doctor who's got somewhere in the region of 30 to 40 years experience. He runs 3 institutes in the world, and he treats a range of patients that suffer with things like Alzheimer's, dementia, and autism, to name a few. And some of his treatment programs, or specifically, not some of his treatment programs, include EMF reduction treatments, where you limit your exposures or completely eradicate them for a period of treatment in order to help your immune system and symptoms of disease to be alleviated. So with that in mind, my research has actually led me to finding proper, credible information in the terms of peer-reviewed studies, and I've actually made a few notes here of some of my continuing research, just to sort of make aware the listeners and anyone who's currently unaware of some of the hidden dangers that we are categorically being told it is safe, and in fact there's a multitude of layers to this, and that suggest it's not safe. So
I think we should prepare, just sorry to butt in, I think we should prepare a proper deep dive on this, because
absolutely,
we've teetered around the edge a couple of times. I think with this interview so far, we're thinking like we could go in. We could go in. There's so much to it. And actually, I've had a few people now. They've listened to the last chat that me and you did, Ben, and we spoke about diet, vitamins and minerals and anti-nutrients and things like that. And that's also something that I've certainly researched quite a lot, and I know you've started on as well. And I believe that that's directly linked to the severity of the EMS as well. So I think there's a lot that we could do, and it'll be interesting for Nathan, I think, to help us with some of this research if you wanted to, and share some of your ideas, because you're very much looking into, you know, the prevention of these issues. And I guess to some degree you're taking it into your own hands, because if you look at a lot of the main scientific literature, it's suggesting that it is safe. But I think we're a little bit longer in the tooth now, and we've seen how this plays out and how it has played out in many cases. So forgive us for looking at that and still being skeptical. You know, I've been accused a few times of people suggesting or pointing me in the direction of certain science, and I'm like, I still don't believe it. And they're basically suggesting you're a science denier, or you're denying the facts. But it's like we've been through this many times now, and I think eventually I just know it's going to come out to be proven negative, even if it can't be proved now, which Ben quite clearly and rightly is suggesting that it can.
Yeah, it can. Like you say, for a later podcast and discussion when we will delve into it deeply, I don't want to get too much into it at the minute, but as it's in line with Nathan's clothing line and the protective element to the clothing that he's providing, I just wanted to point out a few basic, well, I say basic, just a few things there without getting into great detail. So the number one, or one of the most EMF affecting devices that we're exposed to is our mobile phones, our cell phones. For example, I mean, consider this.
I was hoping you wouldn't mention mobile phone, because I'm attached to mine.
I
was there, fingers crossed, thinking, say something like telephone wire. I don't know. Mobile. I'm sat on my mobile phone. Great.
Well, as the saying goes, the truth often hurts, which is why I'm going straight in, because we're all so addicted to them. I mean, for anyone listening that knows me over the years, it makes me laugh, because I used to be in denial about it, but I'm humble enough to hold my hands up and admit to it now that I've always had what you could suggest as an unhealthy addiction to constantly being on my phone. But the more I delve into these studies and ideas and understanding, the less I'm becoming attached to it, which can only be a positive thing. For example, consider this: every cell phone that you get, who reads an instruction manual these days on any new device, right? Unless you're an absolute tech nerd or geek and you feel it necessary. Most people don't read the instruction manual, but if you was to pull an instruction manual for a cell phone out, for example, one of the suggestions or pieces of advice in the safety section, it actually states, do not hold this device close to your head, which is just insane because that's how you use a mobile phone, right? So like the fact that it's in the instruction manual stating that you should limit, if not refrain from putting the cell phone next to your head, that's crazy in its own right. And the reason being is, if you do your research, which we will bring to light in a future episode when we go deep onto this topic, using a mobile phone next to your head has actually been shown to increase the risk of brain cancer by 8% annually. So every year there's an 8% increase in your risk to brain cancer by using a mobile phone. I mean, that is just one potential hidden danger of overusing your cell phone. Another problem, by using consistent and overuse of mobile phone next to your head, it makes your blood-brain barrier leaky, which then allows an invasion of toxicity in your brain, which is horrific for your central nervous system and immune function. And there's also studies that are now linking symptomatic manifestation of anxiety and depression linked to overuse of cell phones, which is just crazy. I mean,
I could vouch for that. Not so much the depression side of things, but there's definitely some like excess level of dopamine that I get when I'm either on not so much social media, but maybe a bit of Twitter, or especially if I'm listening to a podcast, or like I feel the need to listen to things all the time, which was great at the beginning, and well, not even the beginning, but for years, because obviously I'm educating myself and I'm constantly learning and whatnot. But when it gets to the point where like even you're having a shower and I've got a podcast on, and it's like, what are you doing? I think it's so important to have the ability to, and it's just become an addiction over years. Just turn it off and just be in the moment. Go and sit in the garden. I don't know, like whatever. But I always have to have something on in the background.
Yeah.
So I can vouch from a stimulus perspective. I mean, I haven't so much noticed the anxiety or depression side of things, and I'm not doubting that that's fair. If anything, I'm sure that it's fair. But it's that dopamine hit. It's probably just as bad as the other vices that we have, the smoking, the drinking, the watching TV, eating chocolate or bad food or whatever. It's all the dopamine, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, as you were talking there, I was just looking at some of my notes and I'd almost forgotten this one. So take, for example, actually making a phone call from your mobile phone. If you're calling someone when your reception and signal, let's say, you've got bars on the top of your screen. Let's say it's a measure of 5 bars. If you've only got 1 bar, as they say, what actually happens then is it forces your phone to emit 10 to 1,000 times the amount more radiation as it's ramping up its power to try and connect to a potentially distant cell phone tower that it's emitting the signal. So if you've got poor signal, don't make that phone call. Just wait until you've got better signal, because your phone has to work extra hard and emits more radiation when you've got less signal. So
Oh, wow. I
for
didn't know
anybody
that.
that's looking to avoid taking phone calls, the age old, oh, I didn't have signal, like that's now in your favor to use that as an excuse, if you like, because it's actually more dangerous when you've got less signal to try and make a call.
Wow.
I know, it's
You know,
crazy. They're such sobering facts that
it's the things that you'll be told, and then you just probably in a day or two you just bloody ignore again.
yeah,
That's the problem. We're so mind controlled and programmed. Even me, and I know this information, and you just still do it. Like we were speaking about these earbuds, the Bluetooth, and I still went and bought them. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I take them out if I'm like, as soon as I end this call, they're going in the box and they're going away from me. I don't just sit there in my ears all day, but I still bought them. And I remember our first initial conversation with Nathan, when I was saying the day you come out with EMF proof pocket, like in my jeans, pocket proof EMF lining, I'm in, and I'll come up with all of my trousers and or I'll buy the whole line, because that's one of my biggest worry is having it in your pocket. When you're on it and you're making calls, obviously that's bad, but if you're walking around all day and it's in your pocket the whole time. And one thing I used to do, which is really bad, and my missus tells me off all the time now, is I will have it between my legs while I'm driving, which is like the worst thing you can do.
Well, I'm so glad that you brought this up, because this leads me to my next point: laptops. But obviously this isn't to discredit to detach this point from mobile phones between your legs or in your pockets, for example. This goes in addition. So laptops, men who use laptops on their laps, there's a study to show now that those men saw their swimmers or their sperm count decrease by up to 25%.
Wow.
Now, if everybody's and that's not specific to men. It affects women's fertility health and hormonal health too. But if anybody's looking for another means of contraception, just put your laptop or your phone between your legs, and it'll do just that. But a solution.
I can't do that, because as soon as I have it on my lap and I never do it, but if I ever do, I don't know what it is, but consciously I feel like I can feel it irradiating me or something. I don't know. It just feels weird.
You've got an innate sense of hypersensitivity to the electromagnetic fields. One of the solutions.
I can feel it. I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah, I hear that when I'm looking into different examples of people that suffer with EHS, electro hypersensitivity. That's a real thing. Like, some people are so sensitive to it that they can literally feel it in their electrobiological field. The solution that assists you from protecting yourself, for example, by having your laptop on your lap or your phone in your pocket. Laptop specifically emits just as much radiation as a smartphone when connected to Wi-Fi, if not more. But the same way we would encourage, like, put your phone into airplane mode or just put it in the drawer and don't use it as much. Distance is always our friend in all of this. So with your laptop, for example, if you keep it at approximately about 1 foot away from your body, this has been shown to cut down the radiation exposure by a good 80%. So yeah, distance is your friend. That's not something to be skipped on.
Do you know another thing that I've noticed as well? And sorry to ramble in. I know this is a podcast, not a doctor's sat in a doctor's room. When I hold it in my hand, so if I'm texting for a while or I'm on Twitter or whatever, I feel it in my hands. It's like I can feel it irradiate in my hands again. And again, I don't know if it's because it's in my mind, but my hands start feeling a little bit numb. Does that make sense?
Same with myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you get that as well?
The last week especially, because I've sort of got another work phone as well. I literally just feel not necessarily the heat, but it's like I feel I can't explain it. I do actually feel the radiation in my hand, and like when I'm touching stuff, it feels a bit more numb than what it kind of like normally is in terms of like when I'm touching stuff. It's really weird. So I'm definitely in agreement with what you're saying there, Jay.
Yeah, on that point of the tingly effect of like your hand using your mobile phone for extended periods. This sounds kind of crazy to say because it almost falls under the premise of like you're trying to teach somebody to suck eggs and when it comes to how to use a mobile phone. But where I'm going with this is consider a business or a workplace. Many corporations and businesses now, in the name of work, will hand out mobile phones, for example, to their employees. But it would sound crazy and everybody would be sort of meeting this with rejection if you were to then, as an employer, start giving out, we used to call them in the construction industry, a toolbox talk or, a training, or in I would imagine in the corporate world. If your employer was to say, here you go, Jay, here's a mobile phone for work use, but you're booked in on Monday at 9 a.m. at the office, you've got to come and do a day's training on how to safely use the mobile phone, you'd be like, what? You can't teach me how to use my mobile phone? Like, are you mad? But for example, consider a tree surgeon. If a tree surgeon was starting a new job for a new company and he'd got 25 years experience of using a chainsaw, but his new company was like, right, in the name of competency, we're going to have to, as a new employee, you're going to have to go through our company course on safe use and PPE measures and all of these things on how to use a chainsaw. And the guy who's long in the tooth in his career would probably be like, I don't need to be taught or retrained on how to use a chainsaw. I could probably teach you a thing or two, but for insurance purposes as a business and an employer, it's necessary to maintain competency. Now, where I'm going with this is the underwriters of Lloyd's of London, in terms of insurance for businesses, they have now removed, I think, I might be misquoting this, but I think it's called Exclusion 32. And what that allows in the UK is businesses now have anonymity when it comes to the possibility of somebody making a claim against the company for radiation-based damage from a wireless device, i.e. a cell phone. It gives them legal anonymity. Now you've got to ask the question when you hear that, why on earth would the insurers remove the liability from the employer for the risk that a mobile phone causes to the health of the employee? If that doesn't raise a red flag, I don't know what does.
Well, it's not just them either. There's a few. There's quite a few of them now as well.
Yeah,
I think they were the biggest example of this. But yeah, you've got to look at that. You know, it's like if you were driving a car and historically cars exploded and car insurance was void if your car was to explode. You'd be like, hold on a minute, I'm not getting that car because it might explode. It just doesn't make any sense. But again, the problem is, I think, and I've been going quite into this over the last week or two, is the whole kind of mind control principles. And I'm not saying like it's like MK Ultra level stuff. I'm just talking like on a subconscious level. It's like we are under some type of mind control where we know these things are bad, but we still do it. And you know, you'll go with your friends, you know, for a drink or whatever, and you have this conversation with them, and they're like, they can't think of anything worse than like to discuss. Nah, mate, stop being a pussy. And you're like, whoa, like this is real. Like you got a kid who's 8 years old and they've got a phone, we'll deal with that later.
Mate,
It's just, in my opinion, it's just an extreme level of mind control. We're just ignoring these facts.
yeah, not to go too deep into this, but it's imperative that I make this point. Seeing as you mentioned and children, I mean, I must state, obviously, I'm not a parent myself, so for anyone listening, forgive me. Like, if it seems a bit rich coming from me, I know you guys, Nathan and Jay, you've both got kids of your own, so this will be quite alarming. I would imagine to hear, but 4 reasons why children are way more affected by EMFs than adults are these. These are some of the notes that I made from my research. It's now been shown that the body of a child naturally absorbs twice the amount of EMF radiation when compared to an adult, pound for pound. Cell phones and other wireless devices were never intended for children to use, and when their tests are carried out, they are tested on the skull on average of a 6'2" male that weighs 220 pounds. And as children's brains are still developing, it's now been shown that EMFs have been found to directly impact the neuronal formation of the brain during child growth. And worst of all, there is not a single study that has been carried out on how electrosmog and EMF exposures to children, that the environment that they're born into might affect them in the long run. Not one single study. So I think it's imperative that information regarding EMFs and 5G, as it's so current right now, if not for our own health and progressive nature of our immune function, for the children, like for the kids, because what a world to be growing up in as it is, but let alone to grow up not knowing that you're under consistent bombardment from an invisible enemy.
Yeah, that is crazy.
Yeah, that is really deep.
That is really deep, mate. God,
Sorry.
taking us over the bloody edge there.
Well, I mean, I'd like to limit my sort of child in terms of like her going on the iPad and stuff like that, because obviously I'm more conscious and aware. But for sort of the average person, it's nothing. It's a bit of like hush time for the child. Okay, you know what? Have your little me time for sort of 2 hours on the iPad or on your sort of console or whatnot, while I can kind of crack on and watch a soap on TV. So it's kind of like technology. It's like it can be used as kind of like a bit of a hushing.
Yeah.
A stimulation as well for the child. So it's a bit of an easy get out, kind of like a jail card for yourselves as parents to kind of like, oh, you know what, just let them use for sort of half an hour, but obviously not knowing the sort of detrimental effects obviously that will have on them sort of long term. So
do you not think on that point, Nathan, it's mad how, so when I was like 7 or 8, I remember me and a football in the street. If people were going to play with me, brilliant. If not, I'm in the street doing kick-ups on my own. Like, I was always out. I was out with a stick, playing with mud, just, and you look at that now, you look at your kids and the thought of them being out in the street, you think, that's so dangerous. However, you're happy to slap an iPad on their lap for 3 hours, where in reality, that's what we did. And I think it's, when you look into like the positive and the negative ion stuff as well, you need to be out, you need your bare feet on the ground, you need your hands in the mud. You need to be, I think it's really grounding. And I feel, and this is why, it sounds a bit crazy, but if I'm stressed and I feel like I need grounding, especially when it's raining, which is double weird. Like, I understand this is weird, but I'll go out in the garden with my bare feet and I'll just sort of stand there for a minute, and it grounds me. There's something about it, and this isn't just some spiritual woo-woo. Like, this is real, real shit. It's grounded. Yeah, and the fact that I need to do it. Imagine what kids are like these days. They're not even going to understand what it feels like to be grounded. They're just like, they're almost growing up as half the human that we used to create or we used to be, like in the sense of being human. Right? What is being human? Being human is dealing with bacteria, being out, having your hands in the dirt, making things, touching things, creating things. And I feel like you're just so quick to throw an iPad at them. And I'm guilty of this as well. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm guilty of this.
We all are. We all are as parents.
It's terrible. Are you looking into, back on the point of the EMF clothing, are you looking into a kid's line? Is that something that you're in the process of doing, or you've thought about, or?
Yes, I am developing a baby range sort of as we speak. So we'll be sort of starting from sort of 12 months to sort of 24 months onwards. A baby range with obviously all the EMF stuff as well. So I wanted to sort of start from sort of the grassroots level really, and have it all going all the way up to sort of adult sizes as well. But going back to what you're saying about the technology and sort of childhood and us growing up, I think the new thing now is kids actually watching other kids play on like YouTube and stuff like that, so they're getting a second-hand experience of life,
I've noticed that.
Crazy. That's the newest thing now, and like these sort of YouTubers have got like 10, 20 million followers and it's their own kids that are playing in the garden with toys. And
it's mockery. It's pure mockery, isn't
really
it?
Crazy. And obviously that stems, if people are doing that, that gives obviously the children that are watching on the iPad more time to be exposed to that amount of sort of radiation and stuff like that within the device as well. So in their heads they're thinking that they're having a good time, but they're not getting that sort of like I said, that first-hand experience actually going outside. I don't know if it's society or the media portraying that where this day and age is a bit unsafer because obviously we're more exposed to sort of media attention and stuff like that, so the world seems a bit more closed in and unsafe. It's just how it is these days, and hopefully it'll return back to normal. But we're kind of like that last generation that went out and actually done stuff and got a thrill from doing crazy stuff with our mates on the bikes and stuff like that. So
you go out as a kid and you wouldn't have a phone because there wasn't any, and the only way you could contact your parents is by using someone's landline. And the day I remember as a kid, the day used to be, I leave my house, I've got lunch in my bag or a couple of quid in my pocket, and as long as I'm back before the street lamps come on, then whatever goes. And I'd end up in all types of places, and I was always safe. I can't vouch for now, I don't know. I would imagine it's probably even more safe now, because if there was an incident, you're never far from a phone. Just write my mobile number on the kid's leg or something, and they'll find a phone somewhere, and I'm sure they'll be fine, or they'll even have a phone. But back then, you'd go out for like 8-9 hours, or even you just nip back in, you'd grab a sandwich. All right, Mum, see you later. Shut the door. You've gone out again for hours and hours, and it was what a feeling it was. It's liberating to think of it now. Just leave your phone at home and go out. I couldn't possibly do that, because what if someone wanted to WhatsApp me? It's ridiculous. And I think even from that level, from a spiritual or psychological level, it's clear that it's damaging. It does have its positives. You can't. I was actually having a conversation with my dad earlier, and my dad's actually starting to really kind of wake up and see what's going on. And I'm watching the journey, and I'm like, go on, Dad, a little further. But he was talking about, he's like, look, we have so much access to information now. When I was a kid, you go to the library and you'd have to sit in the library and read the book. I mean, how fast can you read? You're going to consume about 10 pages and then you've got to leave. Now you can go on YouTube and you watch a video and they'll tell you about the book. So it is beautiful in that sense. We've got so much information. However, I think what they do now, instead of lack of information, it's too much information. So it's like there is no kind of good or bad in a sense. It's everything is good and bad in a way. So don't get me wrong, I'm not knocking today, because I love you know, having the earbuds. I'm walking around the house as I'm talking, doing a podcast. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
I can go on Twitter and I can reach out to thousands of people. It's brilliant. However, you have to know when to put it down, and I don't think we do, and that seriously concerns me.
Yeah, well, that stems, or sorry, I should say that brings me to a quote that I've actually got on my Twitter background. It's
Hey, that should be Holocene logo.
well, I'll
What are you
change.
doing?
Change it. I'm just before I change it, I'm going to quote it because of what you said. In the age of information, ignorance is a choice.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just wanted to get this in before we wrap this up. Some of the things that I've said in this podcast, from my notes and whatnot, they come from some of the research and the course content that I'm undertaking on EMFs. I actually have some cheat sheets in PDF version. So if any of the listeners that are listening or watching this on our YouTube, any of Nathan's following too, if anybody would like access to these, I'm more than willing to send them over to anybody that wants them. You can print them off, you can give them to family, you can look them up for yourself. I'd encourage you to email us at our email address for the Holocene podcast, which will be in one of the intros or somewhere along this recording. Yeah, hit us up. And
You forgot our email, didn't you?
I did forget, but we'll put it in like in the editing process. You know, we're not experts just yet.
I'll tell you what it is. I got it here. It's holocenepodcast@gmail.com.
Cool, brilliant. So yeah, let's wrap this up. But Nathan, do you want to just give your details out for where people can get your information and check out what you've got to offer?
Yes, no problem at all. So in terms of the website's called alchemistvision.com. Instead of the C in the Alchemist, it's the K, so just obviously replace that. And the same for Instagram, so it's at alchemistvision, or you can email me at alchemistvision@gmail.com. We've also given a special discount to your viewers as well. We've done a special promo code, sort of 10% off your entire order. So if you just sort of type in Holocene 10 at the end of the order, then you'll get 10% off any item within the store.
Awesome. Right, well, this has been an absolute pleasure, Nath. As much as it took however long for me to get involved, just sitting there patiently listening to you guys go at it, this has just been brilliant. And
I think the problem we have as a trio on this is, whereas it started off as like an interview format, I think because we've got so much that we can go into, I mean, we haven't even touched on water yet, and I know Nathan's a bit of an expert on that field, and that's something that maybe we can get you on another time and discuss as well, because I think you're more than just a kind of partner here. You're on the road, and you have a lot of information that I think we would benefit from 100%, and I think our audience would as well. And it's just so easy to run on tangents. So for anyone listening, sorry about that, but it's just such exciting information. And if anyone's on this type of journey, chances are you spent a lot of it alone. I know I did. So when you do meet people that get it, and you're not preaching at people, it's like a slippery slide slope when you're having a conversation, and you're all over the place and bouncing off all the walls, and you start here and then you end up 10 miles over there, because it's just so much, there's just so much energy in the conversation and so much information that you just want to just let rip. So for anyone listening, if we did go on tangents, sorry about that, but hopefully it was entertaining and you enjoyed it, because I know I did.
Yeah, there it goes.
And Nathan, it was a pleasure. I'm really glad to have had you on, and hopefully, like I said, I think there's a lot more room for other conversations regarding other topics. But as you've just released mine, which is really exciting, and I'm really excited to be able to be kind of part of it in terms of just at least sharing the information or bringing awareness to what you're doing. Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure. So really, really appreciate you taking the time out, and it's been a great.
Honestly, the pleasure's all mine. I really appreciate you having me on board, and obviously just sharing my experiences as well, and just giving myself a platform to to expose the company and who I am as a person as well. So it's really good. It's I feel really humbled. So yeah, thank you so much.
Awesome. So we'll catch all the listeners and the viewers on the next episode. Take care of yourselves, and we'll catch you soon.
Cool. Peace. Take care.
Thank you.